Before we talk about the aesthetic, let me ask you a question. What exemplifies Generation Z the best? I'd pick three words: queer, mentally ill, and passionate. Generation Z has the highest LGBT population, with 15% identifying as such, as well as having high rates of mental illness. According to Western Governors University, only 45% of Generation Z individuals say their mental health is good or excellent. That is 11% lower than the next closest generation, millennials, those born between 1981 and 1996. In 2017, the latest year for which federal data is available, the study found that more than 1 in 8 Americans ages 12 to 25 experienced a major depressive episode. Generation Z is the most depressed generation. COVID-19 and the resulting responses from our governments made all of this worse. Well, most of it. 2020 led to a rise in activism through the summer's Black Lives Matter movement and the resurgence of social justice online. It also led to increased rates of depression and anxiety, as well as a resulting rise of suicide. During the pandemic, about 4 in 10 adults in the United States have reported symptoms of anxiety or depressive disorder, a share that has been largely consistent, up from 1 in 10 adults who reported these symptoms from January to June 2019. What does all this have to do with cottagecore? I'm glad you asked. Cottagecore is merely a symptom of Generation Z's feelings of hopelessness exaggerated by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has spurred us further into financial and social ruin. Let me break that down for you. Though cottagecore has existed throughout the 2010s, finally being named in 2018, it truly joined the mainstream in 2020. Forever 21 and other fast fashion stores have been quick to jump on this trend. But what exactly is cottagecore? Cottagecore is an internet fashion aesthetic, also described by some sources as a Generation Z subculture, that celebrates an idealized rural life and developed throughout the 2010s until being named on Tumblr in 2018. For me, cottagecore is about coziness at home, says Molly Hatch, founder of an eponymous tableware and home goods company, who has embraced the style. Key aesthetic components are bringing natural elements indoors as decorative elements. Dried flowers, fresh flowers, houseplants, along with a natural color palette with neutrals and warm tones, she explains. Of course, this definition may be a little different for everyone, but in general, it's a feeling of coziness, of the outdoors being as grand as we imagine it to be, with a bit of Midwestern farming aesthetic sprinkled in. If you go on any picture-based social media platform, you'll find it characterized as square collar dresses, picture-at pastries and foods, and a strong sense of escapism. But what exactly does all of this mean? During 2020, feelings of isolation and anxiety from the quarantines and other COVID-19 restrictions rose drastically. An increase of cottagecore aesthetic posts as well as followings for fan life and other nomad lifestyles occurred. Most people over the past year have lived vicariously through others with the financial means to travel, often supplemented by their work on social media. A combination of anxiety and depression, as stated by my therapist, make leaving desirable, but staying in a place, despite how unhappy it may make you, comfortable and safe. Being stuck in our homes as the world burned around us illustrated just how much of life was unreachable to us, and just how much we are missing out on. Sitting at home revealed that the grass really is greener on the other side. Cottagecore is a reflection of our dissatisfaction with our current lives. Even prior to COVID-19, people were becoming increasingly upset with the unequal wealth distribution in the United States. The kinds of things our parents did easily, going to college, backpacking through Europe, traveling, is more or less unobtainable because of inflation and increased financial strains. Hell, credit scores weren't even really a thing until 1989. It's no surprise then that social media, one of our only reliable forms of interaction through a year of turmoil, has reflected not only the increased uncertainty about the future, as well as these three aspects of our generation. Even some of the lower-cost options, like van life, bus conversions, or other forms of nomad life, are usually populated not by people genuinely making a living off of their social media, but by trust fund babies and retirees trying to make their savings last. I went to a tiny house festival with my girlfriend a few weeks ago and made a point of asking every younger couple what they did for a living. The most common answers were through arts and crafts, and some vague walk around of an answer that was usually summed up to odd jobs or savings. Almost every build had a stash of arts and crafts for sale out front. Wood burning and crystal jewelry were some of the most popular choices. They were nice, but hobby nice, not make-a-living nice, and those builds often cost upwards of $30,000. The van itself was incredibly expensive, but if you're looking for a nice one, and then another $5,000 for the actual conversion. I sincerely doubt you're making a living through your crystal wrap jewelry. Van life exemplifies the desire for escape from modern containment. The desire to travel is one that very few can find, as many jobs don't allow it or don't pay enough to do so. But even tiny houses and van builds are for the financially capable. The simple truth of the matter is, cottagecore is a yearning for the simpler life, one where you are close to the land in a way that doesn't remind you just how icky the outdoors can be. There is an undeniable queerness to cottagecore that we simply can't ignore. A lot of the pictures and posts that have hashtag lesbian tagged along with it, and the fashion and products made in the genre are almost always targeted at women. As stated in an article by Otto Straddle, unlike Tradwives, a right-wing movement that advocates for regressive gender roles, cottagecore presents domesticity outside of the binary. People of any gender are invited to participate in the cottagecore's decidedly soft aesthetic, but women and women's work are at the forefront. As Isabel Stone wrote in the New York Times, cottagecore offers a vision of the world where men are not consciously excluded, they are simply an afterthought. Cottagecore is safe and undeniably feminine. Instead of a banishment back to the kitchen, as the Tradwife movement advocates for, the ultimate cottagecore dream, to run away to a Bulic wonderland with your lesbian wife, harkens back to the withering lesbian separatist movement of the 70s, which called on feminists to either claim lesbianism or celibacy and move to women's land. So yes, cottagecore has managed to encompass queerness in a way rarely seen in other aesthetics, especially as few others, if any, have reached this level of acclaim. All of us lesbians, us queer gals, we like cottagecore a lot. The sheer use of the tag, as well as the rise of fashion and other subsects of the aesthetic, prove this. When Gen Z likes something, the world knows. We obsess and obsess and obsess, and the simple fact that corporations have found a way to monetize this trend illustrates this better than I ever could. After all, the concept of liminal spaces has been around way longer, and I've yet to see any brands do a liminal space themed clothing or home decor line. If it can be commercialized and sold, well, it's on its way to being ruined. But also, it's big. The cottagecore trend just exemplifies what we want, an escape from our sad little lives. Trapped in quarantine, the average person's mental health has gotten way worse. A simple life on a farm or living in a cottage by the sea seems like valid options to separate from the hustle and bustle we are being herded towards. It's escapism in its purest, defined by its creators and consumers. It may be unobtainable for many, but until corporate meddling destroys it completely, it's a nice ideal to work towards. Thank you for listening, dear viewers. This is a topic that I really, really love, and I put so much effort not only into actually finding sources, etc., but I actually put the effort into considering van life and tiny house living because my parents do not support me financially, and it's hard. Life is hard. I'm poor. So I did research into tiny homes, and overwhelmingly this cottagecore lifestyle is expensive. You really can't afford it unless you're already pretty old and settled and have a steady job. So I just want to see if when we actually get there, when we're on our late 20s and early 30s, if we actually, when we actually can afford to do cottagecore, I want to see if we actually do it. So this, dear viewers, is where we part. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And you made it this far, go ahead and comment taco, so I know you were listening. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Like a bird on a tree,